Hi guys, it's Nina from VR Focus, and today I'm doing a little video about a video game called Defector. From the makers that brought you Wilson's Heart, Twisted Pixel have now created a super cool action spy video game called Defector. This is coming exclusively to the Oculus Rift, and I tried it out at E3. VR Focus went over to E3 2018 and we tried out the demo, and I am going to be talking about what the game was like, what you were trying to do, and sort of the similarities of other VR video games that I've tried that are kind of similar to this. When trying it out, I thought of two things. One, it reminded me a lot of LA Noire, Rockstar's sort of detective video game where you had to go and uncover different mysteries, who was the murderer, what was what. LA Noire, they did, you know, the special motion capture of the faces, and that was, and still is, I think, one of the best ways of using virtual reality. Here, it wasn't 100% as maybe nuanced as it was in LA Noire, but I could still gather general facial expressions. Number two, it kind of reminded me of London Heist, where Sony's London studio basically have taken the London Heist out of the PlayStation VR video games that they released on the PlayStation, and it created Blood and Truth. The similarity is because you are using different gadgets, you're, you know, trying to blow up things, and you've got different guns, and you're trying to maneuver your way through a crowd and deal with complicated situations where you're kind of dealing with what I feel is kind of the mafia of some kind. So let's talk about the demo. You start off in a bathroom where you are given a little box and you are asked to put in contact lenses, which are AR, obviously. This is obviously going to be useful for you to find out little bits and pieces of information about objects and pieces and things around you. You're given contact lenses, you're given an earpiece where you are then, you know, given instructions by somebody who tells you that you have to find the entrance to find some type of big lord mafia guy. So you leave the bathroom, you head round, you try and open the door you have to hack. So you walk around and, you know, you're kind of on this massive, I suppose, airplane. The earpiece or the person in your ear is telling you that you have to act cool, you know, don't do anything stupid, don't be aggressive. When Kevin played it, he ended up punching somebody and that was it. That was kind of like the end of the game because you're not supposed to do that, you can't get any further. You have to kind of act nice. There's a part where a doorman frisks you up and he asks you to kind of lift your arms, and you're kind of standing there while someone is virtually touching you up, which is a little bit weird. And then you go through, you meet a man who's having, I suppose, dinner, and a Russian lady who's on the bed, and you are then asked to go and sit down and have some food with him. And then you go into a strange flashback. So suddenly there's a dissolve and you go back into an interrogation room where, I suppose, an officer or a spy trainer tells you how to infiltrate and navigate a person that you're interrogating. Now, I have never done any type, or I don't think I've ever done any type of interrogation before in my life, but I know a little bit about diplomacy. So there were a lot of things that kind of cool because you get different voice options, kind of like how in Mass Effect it's kind of like, what do you want to do now? You've got 3 different options, and then depending on which option you choose, it changes color. If you've chosen something that's a little bit too head-on or it's too obvious, it goes red. And then the guy who's walking around, pacing around is like, too obvious, or you're too aggressive, or you're being too subtle. Maybe try a different approach. And then you try all of the other ones, and you can kind of see what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Underneath the character that you're interrogating, you see different X's. Now, depending on how many X's you've got, I suppose the more red X's you have, the less likely the character is going to go on and try and help you. And at the end of the day, you're trying to get information out of this guy, and I think the more red X's you have, the least, like, he's not going to help you out. Whilst if you give him the right sort of questions and the right way of talking or interrogating him, I suppose, the more likely he's going to help you. So then you flash back into sort of the cabin where the guy is sitting there. You can throw, this is a weird part because you can throw fruits at him, you can throw everything at him, and the characters don't react. They're just going along, and they kind of expect you to sit down and just listen to them, but you can kind of just goof around and nothing really happens, which kind of breaks the illusion. After all of this training of the interrogation, and you're prompted different questions. Basically, you have to try and bluff, or you have to find your way into figuring out how to get weapons from this guy. He's already sold these mass numbers of weapons to somebody else, and in my scenario, I bluffed and I said, well, if you look into your bank account, you will see that I have, you know, put this much amount of money into your bank account, and so therefore I want to have the weapons because it's already there. He goes off with his hot lady to try and see if indeed the money has gone into his account. One, I find that a little bit strange that he can't just check on his phone, or that he has to go and disappear to do that, and he leaves this unknown stranger in this private room, because I obviously then go around and snoop around, obviously by the advice given to the individual on my earpiece, and I find a suitcase and I find information on the guy. I find a ring, I put it on myself. I think this is like a special ring that's got a weapon on it, and I go and sit back down and pretend nothing happened, and if you're too slow, that's the end of the game, you get shot and killed, which is what I did the first time. The guy helps you out, he hacks into the rich man's account, pretends that there's, you know, tons and tons of money in there, and then suddenly out of nowhere, the woman on the sofa ends up being an informant who, you know, points the gun at him. She has obviously been sleeping with him under the disguise of being, you know, a femme fatale, and then now she's pulled the gun on him. That's as far as I managed to play. Watching Kevin play, there's different modes that you can access, so there's kind of like a night vision, there's also different weapons that you can have. You can have dual pistols, you can have a shotgun, and at the very end you end up jumping off of a plane and shooting, you know, jet fighters from a giant aircraft, and it's very much a Bond-esque thing, which is why I'm saying it's very similar to Blood and Truth, because, you know, it's got crazy explosions, there's impossible missions, there's certain things that break the illusion and is so very clear it's still a VR game. I think the fact is that you can throw things at people and, you know, they don't do anything, number one. Number two, like, you can get stuck in a video game. I watched Kevin, you know, in this game for about half an hour try and figure out what to do, and sometimes it just wasn't very easily, you didn't quite know what you were supposed to do. Maybe he wasn't listening, but he didn't quite know what he was doing. I very much like the fact that you can answer in different ways, and depending on how you answer, you've got different results. I only got one red X, which means that, you know, I did pretty well, and that made me feel pretty good. I'm not sure if this is a realistic way of learning how to interrogate somebody, but it would be really cool to do this as a VR training simulation of learning how to interrogate. Not interrogate, but maybe manipulate people in conversation, which is really screwed up, but I mean, it could be done. This is essentially what you're doing. You're learning how to interrogate and manipulate a situation to your advantage. I don't know what the rest of the video game is going to be like. I know that it's very much Bond-esque, it's very much gadget-oriented, and it looks like it's crazy. The fact that you jump off an airplane and you skydive and you shoot, you know, people around you whilst you're jetting through the sky seems absolutely ludicrous. So it looks very action-packed. I'm very interested to see what the final video game is going to be like, but that's what the demo was so far. Based on what I've said, you know, saying how, you know, it's kind of similar to LA Noire and the fact that you're kind of a detective, you're trying to interrogate, and number two, kind of like Blood and Truth, the crazy action gadget stuff, and this is specifically for the Oculus Rift. Do you think you will play this video game? Did you like Wilson's Heart? Do you think that the creators of Wilson's Heart would make a good action spy video game for the Oculus Rift? Let me know your thoughts. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.